Hey everyone, I'm Tiffany Harlick, and it is my honor and pleasure to bring some information to you about planets in astrology. So, this is a perfect little mini course for beginners. If you're brand new to astrology, welcome. If you're intermediate or advanced in astrology, welcome. My background is that I've been studying astrology since 2000. My practice is here in Austin, Texas. I'm a master teacher for the Lisa Williams School. I'm a certified yoga teacher and I have a master's degree in health psychology, and I love beekeeping. So that's a little bit about me. What we're going to cover today here has to do with the planets. And so we're looking at both the inner planets and the outer planets. And before we get going, I'm just going to give you a flavor of how I look at astrology in case that's useful to some of you. I do practice Western astrology, and I look at it through the lens of evolutionary astrology, which was founded by Stephen Forrest. And so The Inner Sky is one of the best books for beginning, for learning astrology, because it has all of the basic building blocks. And it's something that you can read out of order. You can read in any chunk, but starting with the planets, Stephen has such a poetic way of writing about it, and I highly recommend this book. So let's jump in terms of astrology 101, when we're talking about astrology, what we're doing is we're looking at the night sky, we're looking up, we're looking at planets in signs, right? Four signs. We're looking for synchronicities, we're looking for a symbol from spirit, we're looking for some information that we're on track, that our life is going well, right? And so as we're looking at the birth chart, we're seeing planets in signs and in houses. So everybody has 12 houses in their birth chart in Western astrology. Today, we're going to focus on the planets, of course. The planets, if you think about this kind of like the movie of your life, the movie script of your life, the planets are the actors. They have different archetypes, different personas. They illuminate different personalities, right? When they're in signs, they have a different behavior. So if you have an actor that's coming in with a pink party dress versus an actor that's coming in with a black hoodie and some tennis shoes versus an actor who's coming in with a sports uniform on, they're going to behave very differently. I behave very differently when I'm dressed up for some cool event versus some workout, right? You take on a little different mojo. And so what sign the planet is in will give it a different flavor. Then you can look at the houses too. And this is the lay of the land. So the houses take us through the hero's journey. But today we're going to stay focused on the planets. And we can divide the planets easily into two groups, the inner planets and the outer planets. I still use the elementary like teaching of my very educated mother just served us 9 pizzas, right? So Mercury, my Venus, very educated, Earth, Mother, Mars. Those are the inner planets right there. They're the inner planets because their orbit is shorter, so it's closer to the Earth. The inner planets meaning closer to the Earth here. And so we start with Mercury. Mercury is the planet that rules the mind. It rules the way that we think, the way that we communicate, the way that we learn, right? And so if you're thinking about people that get diagnosed for different mental disorders or learning disabilities, I always wonder, was there just an odd transit of Mercury or something that was getting kicked up during that time? So with Mercury, it's not just the way that we think and learn, but it's also how we speak to each other, how we listen to each other, how we exchange information with each other. Okay, so Mercury is all about intelligence and learning and classes. And it's also has a dysfunctional side too. So all of the energies are on this polarity axis, right? So the function of Mercury in its highest form is really to convey information, to exchange data, and to communicate. But in its poor form, there's a sense of nervousness. Mercury rules the nervous system too. So when you're inflamed or your nervous system is inflamed, you could also look at the transits of Mercury. The on the downside, still there's worry, there can be anxiety, there can be hyperactivity, the ADHD, the hyperfocus, the obsessions, right? The vrittis of the mind, as we call them in yoga, the fluctuations of the mind, this desire to avoid pain and run towards pleasure, right? The inability to just have this calm, smooth, neutral mindset. So your Mercury helps you see what kind of mindset you have. So that will depend on what sign it is in and what house it is in, and the sacred geometry that goes along with it, how it dances with the other archetypes in your chart. Okay, so when we look at Venus, the next inner planet, well-behaved Venus is all about love and emotional bonding and connection. It represents our love languages. It represents where we want a little bit of luxury and lavishness in our lives. Venus is the goddess of self-worth, but also net worth. So some income opportunities she will show you. And really it's about beauty and harmony, and that just that beautiful side of life, right? In her dysfunction, Venus will show up if she is negatively aspected or having a tough day or in a sign she doesn't want to be in, right? This can show up differently than this beautiful, loving goddess. The energy behind Venus can show up as manipulation or codependency, where there's a neediness, right? Or where there's vanity, where there's this incredible self-centeredness, right? And it can also show up negatively when there's false idols, delusions of grandeur, or when we have rose-colored glasses on and are avoiding truth and confrontation. So Lady Venus there, that is her. If you look at Mars, so Mars, in its function, is all about finding a mission, a purpose. Mars represents the masculine. It represents our stamina, our drive, our fortitude, our motivation. Mars is the inner warrior. Mars shows us direction. Mars is when we have our foot on the gas tank, right? And we are ready to go. It's energy. It's joie de vivre, it's life force, it's our primal side, right? On the negative side, right, of Mars, the dysfunctional side would show up as selfishness. It would show up as self-centeredness. It would show us if we have irritability, if we are restless, if we are discontent, anger, but to the side of rage, right? Anger can also be holy anger, but this is anger to the side of rage. And so you can see the great arc and this huge polarity of the expression of each of the planets in their function and in their dysfunction. Mars has an orbit of 2 years. So when you have a little baby human and they turn 2 years old, they're having a Mars return. So Mars, just like when you have a birthday, you have a solar return, right? But when you turn 2 and 4 and 6 and 8, you're having a Mars return. So in my culture, we would hear a lot about the terrible twos. Well, maybe they're not the terrible twos. Maybe the baby is having its Mars return. And for the first time, it can have expression. It can show, it can talk, it can communicate, right? And there's a frustration that comes with that. And there's a liberation that comes with that. Okay. Now, let's move to the outer planets. So my very educated mother just served us 9 pizzas. So we're talking about Jupiter to begin with. Jupiter has a 12-year cycle. In its function, when it is operating healthy, it is all about growth. It's all about wealth and abundance and a magnification. Jupiter has a strong connection to faith, to philosophy, to our beliefs, to our God or our higher power or a belief in the universe. And there is always a quest for truth wherever Jupiter is. I make the joke that Jupiter influences much like my Jewish aunt, okay? And so you go to her house, she's going to know somebody in the network that can help you grow, that can help you expand. She's not going to let you leave without eating everything on your plate, right? Jupiter grows minds, hearts, and bellies. Jupiter connects us to overseas travel. It connects us to our foreign cultures. It connects us in a way that helps us learn at the university level. Jupiter also rules philosophy and law and religion and spirituality. So Jupiter is the great magnifying glass. And depending on what's going on, yes, Jupiter is benevolent, right? Friends in high places type of a feeling, king of the gods. But it can magnify even the things that we don't want really magnified. So wherever Jupiter is going through your chart, for example, if Jupiter's going through your 10th house of career, that might be a time when you get a lot of media attention. That could go well, or some attention that you don't want. But the idea is that it's magnifying, it's making it big. So you've got Jupiter, the magnifier. In its dysfunction, Jupiter will show up with an overextension, overdoing something, overeating, oversleeping, overworking, overthinking, right? All of the things where we can overextend ourselves. Jupiter and its dysfunction, we can have these delusions of grandeur, right? We can act very foolish. Jupiter is the king of the gods and the fools, and there's a fine line between that. So there can be an element of foolishness in its dysfunction. So Saturn is the next planet, and in its highest function, it shows us discipline. Saturn shows us where we need boundaries, where we need hard lines, where we need structure. Saturn represents our bones. So whenever you have a positive Saturn transit going on, doing things like chiropractic care, dental work, it's the structures of our bodies, but also the structure of society. I think of Saturn like a military granddad in the best of terms, where if you're not early, you're late. You know, there's a structure, you need to be on time. Saturn is the Lord of karma and rules our time. Saturn also shows us a part in our chart where we're a little bit afraid, where there's some limitation, where we feel held back. And this is a very normal, natural part of what makes up our own inner cosmos, right? So that's in its best case, that's what Saturn can do for us. And in terms of discipline, right? Discipline is the word disciple is the root. And disciple has to do with what we choose to study, what we choose to practically go over and understand and learn and commit to. Saturn shows us where we want to commit to things in life. Okay. In its dysfunction, right, you can see a pulling away, you can see a separation, you can see a detachment, you can see some depression and some suppression. And there can be a coldness, a dryness to Saturn if it is not aspected very well. All right, guys, let's look at Uranus. So in its highest function, Uranus shows us where we are more individual, where we need to be the rebel, where we have that inner Einstein. Uranus is very lightning quick. There's a quickening wherever Uranus is in your chart. It shows us, it's almost like the dad in Beauty and the Beast that has that crazy inventor on the side of the hill that is there to really push society forward. Uranus helps us get out of our comfort zone. Uranus shows us futuristic solutions. It rules AI. It rules tech. It rules robotics. It rules communities and networks, right? And this ability to connect through the internet. In its dysfunction, Uranus is very unreliable, very unpredictable, very challenging to work with. We always say expect the unexpected whenever Uranus is around. Uranus can have very stubborn energy and can come across insensitively. So in its dysfunction. Now we've got Neptune. So Neptune is the mystic. Neptune is the great yoga teacher. Neptune is the one who's at bliss. The Van Morrison song, Into the Mystic. Neptune dissolves. It rules the sea, the oceans. And so we use that salt water as a way to dissolve and heal and then evolve. So the waves on the beach may take the seashells back, but they're going to bring a gift back up. So something dissolves and evolves, and the sea brings you different gifts. Neptune rules creativity, our inner artist, our muse, our inner psychic. It rules emotional intelligence and psychic hits and mediumship, psychic development. In its dysfunction, Neptune can illuminate confusion, laziness. It can illuminate issues or addictions with drugs and alcohol because there's a form of escapism going on when Neptune is poorly aspected. And it can show us places where there's delusion, where there's nonsense, right? Neptune blurs the lines between reality and fantasy. And it's where you can be a drop of water in the whole ocean. It's where things get blurred. You're in the mists. You're in between worlds. You're between this world and the next. There's the veil area. That's all very Neptunian. And as we go forward here, we've got Pluto. So Pluto is very much rules the unconscious and the subconscious. Sometimes I'll joke about it and call it the wrecking ball. So in astrology, you'll hear it talked about as the planet of transformation. And that is a very broad term to use, but it's actually very true. It is deep transformation. It is Freudian and Jungian, and it's the underbelly. It rules gold and the resources that are buried treasures under the earth that become unearthed. Pluto shows us more about our psychology, our psyche. It shows us about the cycles of the phoenix rising, where we have walked through the flames and still lived on. It shows us where we fall down 7 times and get back up 8. It shows us the natural cycles of death and rebirth, and death and rebirth, and death and rebirth. It shows us the shamanistic transformation, the dark night of the soul, the shadow work, the feminine side. In its dysfunction, Pluto can show us where the balance of power is off. There can be power hunger. There can be violence. There can be grandiosity. There can be this very dictatorship type energy. Okay, so you've taken a walk through the planets. We have not talked about the sun, right, which is part of the identity that shines forward, the ego, the sense of self. We've not talked about the moon, which is attached to our emotional body and our emotional connectedness and the experiences that we needed as children growing up to feel emotionally understood. We haven't talked about Chiron, the wounded healer. There are many other planetary bodies that we could talk about. We could talk about fixed stars, all kinds of cosmic and celestial bodies. But this right here is the basic building blocks that you will need to have a great foundation in understanding astrology. So, and there we go. So I have a few resources for you guys. Again, my name is Tiffany Harlick. I am teaching an astrology certification course at the Lisa Williams International School for Spiritual Development. I have a beautiful astrology calendar that shows you all of the transits, and it goes in any of your calendar systems, whether it's Google Calendar or Outlook or whatever system you use. It travels with you in any time zone, and it shows you the different planetary transits and lunations. And so you can click on the title and it'll pop up a description, and you can start to learn about what astrology is affecting the day-to-day. I offer a forecast and podcast. I'm on YouTube and Instagram and all of the places. I've got a blog that has great resources if you want to continue to learn astrology. And I offer a newsletter that goes out on Fridays with astrology tidbits for what's happening in the skies. So I do offer sessions and membership classes, and it is my honor to work with you and share some basic foundational information about the planets in astrology. So until we can work together again, guys, it is just my honor and pleasure. And namaste.